You know, there is a really provocative idea floating around in the research stack we are looking at today. It's a phrase you might have heard before, but when you really sit with it, and I mean really let it settle in, it is kind of mind-bending. The idea is that being poor is actually incredibly expensive.
It sounds like a complete contradiction, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The basic logic of arithmetic suggests that having less money means you spend less money. You'd think that scarcity would force you to be the ultimate saver, the ultimate efficient allocator of capital. But when you look at the data, and specifically the behavioral patterns that emerge from financial struggle, the math tells a very different and, frankly, a very expensive story.
Exactly. And that is what we are digging into for this deep dive. We have a massive stack of sources here. We're talking insights from Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Kimi, the works. And our mission is to dissect what the research calls the most destructive financial habits. But, and I want to be super clear about this right off the bat, we need to frame this correctly.
Crucially, because usually when people talk about poor financial habits, it turns into a lecture. It turns into moralizing.
Right. We're not here to scold anyone for buying a coffee. We aren't here to tell you that if you just stop buying avocado toast, you'd be a millionaire by next Tuesday. That is the latte factor myth, and quite honestly, the research shows it's mathematically insignificant compared to the structural issues we're looking at.
We are moving way past that. Because what the sources highlight, particularly the insights from Gemini and Claude, is that while we are talking about habits, many of these behaviors are actually rational responses to irrational situations. They are survival mechanisms. If you are drowning in the middle of the ocean, you don't worry about swimming with perfect Olympic form. You just thrash to keep your head above water.
I love that analogy. So we are going to look at these thrashing behaviors, these habits that keep people trapped. We're going to break this down into 4 specific areas. First, the psychology of scarcity, what poverty actually does to your brain hardware. Second, the mechanics of the trap, the math of debt and convenience. Third, the social pressures, why we spend to signal status. And finally, we're going to pivot to the solutions. How to shift from just surviving to actually designing a way out.
It's about moving from reactive to proactive.
Yeah.
But to get there, we have to understand the trap itself. We have to look at the machinery of scarcity.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want to start with the psychology because I think this is where the most empathy is needed. There was this reality check in the Gemini source that honestly stopped me in my tracks. It talked about cognitive load.
This is foundational. If you miss this, you miss the entire human element of economics. There is this persistent, nasty myth that people in poverty make bad decisions because they aren't smart or they lack discipline or they have some flaw in their character. The research completely flips that on its head. It suggests that the state of poverty itself actually compromises your cognitive function.
It effectively drops your IQ, right? I've seen studies cited that suggest it's a significant drop.
Precisely. Think about your computer. You have your random access memory, your RAM. That's your working memory. Now imagine you have 50 tabs open in your browser. You have a 4K video rendering in the background, and you're trying to run a complex spreadsheet. What happens to the machine?
The spinning wheel of death. Everything slows to a crawl. The mouse lag is unbearable.
Exactly. That is your brain on scarcity. When you are constantly worrying about rent, whether the lights will stay on or how to feed your kids, that worry isn't just a background hum. It is a high-priority process taking up a massive amount of your bandwidth. You literally have less processing power available to make long-term strategic decisions.
So when we see someone making a decision that looks irrational from the outside, like taking a high-interest loan or skipping a bill payment, it's not stupidity, it's mental exhaustion.
It is decision fatigue on steroids.
Yeah.
You are in survival mode.
Yeah.
Your brain is prioritizing immediate survival over long-term optimization. And that leads us directly into another psychological trap mentioned in the Kimi source, present bias.
Oh, this is the immediate gratification trap, the marshmallow test stuff.
It is, but I think gratification almost makes it sound too pleasurable. It's more like immediate relief. When life feels like a house fire, you're going to focus on putting out the flames right in front of you. You aren't thinking about fireproofing the attic for 10 years from now. You were thinking about surviving the next 10 minutes.
That explains the phenomenon of the windfall. You know, tax season comes around, or maybe a small bonus at work, you get, say, $2,000. The logical textbook advice is save that money, put it in an emergency fund. But the habit we see, statistically, is spending it immediately.
Right. And if you are judging from the outside, you say, see? They can't save. As soon as they get money, they blow it on a big TV or a vacation. But if you are inside that high-stress environment, That money represents a rare moment of release. It's a dopamine hit in a life that is otherwise full of cortisol and stress. The brain is screaming for relief now, not security later.
It's fighting biology at that point. You're trying to use logic to override a physiological need for stress reduction.
It really is. And that stress can become so painful that it leads to what the sources call financial blindness, or the ostrich effect.
I identified with this one a little too much, to be honest. This is the don't open the mail strategy.
It's a classic defense mechanism. The Gemini and DeepSeek sources both highlight this. If acknowledging your financial reality causes physical pain or intense anxiety, which it does for many people, money stress lights up the same pain centers in the brain as physical injury. The human brain's natural response is to avoid the source of that pain.
So you stop checking the bank balance. You throw the bills in a drawer unopened. You just hope it goes away.
And here is where the destructive part comes in. It's not just that you don't know your balance. It's that by not looking, you invite what I call vampire expenses.
Vampire expenses? That sounds ominous.
It is. These are those small, recurring drains. The subscription you forgot about, but is still charging you $15 a month. The monthly bank maintenance fee you could have waived if you just changed a setting. The late penalty because you missed the due date by 2 days, because you are too afraid to look at the account. These vampires bleed you dry in the background.
It's ironic, isn't it? You avoid looking to avoid the pain, but by avoiding looking, you create more pain.
That is the tragic loop of scarcity. You act to protect your mental state, but that action degrades your financial state, which then worsens your mental state. It's a downward spiral.
So that's the internal landscape, the psychology. We've got cognitive overload, present bias, and avoidance. Now I want to shift to the mechanics, the actual traps. Because you can have the best mindset in the world, you can be a Zen master of discipline, but if the system is designed to trip you up, you're going to fall.
And the foundation of all these mechanical traps, according to Claude and DeepSeek, is living without a buffer.
Zero margin for error.
Right. If you are living strictly paycheck to paycheck, you are walking a tightrope without a net. In that scenario, a flat tire isn't just an annoyance. It isn't just a bad Tuesday. It's a catastrophe.
I think people who have a buffer forget what that feels like. A $400 car repair, if you have savings, is just an errand. You go to the shop, you swipe the card, you're annoyed, but you drive home and eat dinner.
Exactly. But if you have zero buffer, that $400 might as well be $4,000. You simply do not have it. And the domino effect begins. You can't pay for the repair, so you can't get the car back. If you can't get the car, you can't get to work. If you miss 3 shifts, you lose wages or maybe even get fired. If you lose wages, you can't pay rent. So a nail in a tire becomes an eviction notice.
And to stop that eviction, to stop that spiral, you are forced into the next trap, high-cost credit.
This is the stuff that makes my blood boil. The payday loans, the title loans, the rent-to-own schemes.
It is the math of predation. Gemini and Claude are very specific about this. When you are desperate because of that flat tire, you turn to the only people willing to lend to you quickly. But the cost is astronomical. We aren't talking about 20% credit card interest. We are talking APRs exceeding 300 or 400%.
Let's put that in perspective. 400% interest. That is insane. It shouldn't even be legal, but it is.
And it creates a debt treadmill. Walk us through how that works mathematically.
Okay, so you borrow $500 to fix the car. The lender charges a fee, let's say $75, due in 2 weeks when you get your paycheck. So you owe $575. But when payday comes, your check is already spoken for rent, electricity, food. You don't have the spare $575.
So you default.
No, the lender says, no problem. Just pay the $75 fee, and we will roll the loan over for another 2 weeks. So you pay the $75. You still owe the original $500. 2 weeks later, same thing. You pay another $75. You still owe the $500.
You are running in place.
You are. You might end up paying back $1,500 in fees on a $500 loan and still owe the principal. You are handing over your future income to a lender just to survive today. You are effectively renting money at a price that guarantees you stay poor.
And it's not just the big loans, right? There's also this concept of the convenience tax.
Oh.
Gemini mentioned this, and I thought the toilet paper math was such a perfect, tangible example.
This is one of the clearest examples of why it's expensive to be poor. Poverty comes with a scarcity of 2 things, cash flow and time.
So walk us through the toilet paper math.
Okay, so let's say you have $5 in your pocket, and that's it until Friday. You need toilet paper. You can walk to the corner bodega and buy a single roll for $2. Or you could go to a big box store like Costco and buy a 30-pack where the price per roll drops to 50 cents.
But the 30-pack costs $15, and you only have 5.
Exactly. You literally cannot afford the savings. Or maybe you don't have a car to get to the big box store. Or maybe you take the bus, but you can't carry a 30-pack of toilet paper and 3 bags of groceries on the bus, so you buy the single roll. Over the course of a year, you might end up paying 400% more for toilet paper than a wealthy person does, simply because you can never afford to buy in bulk.
That is death by 1,000 cuts?
It is, and it applies to everything. It applies to the boots theory that Terry Pratchett wrote about. A rich man buys $100 boots that last 10 years. A poor man can only afford $10 boots that last a season. After 10 years, the poor man has spent $200 on boots and still has wet feet.
So you're paying a premium for being broke in almost every aspect of life.
In every aspect. Food is another huge one. People criticize the poor for buying fast food. It's expensive and unhealthy, they say. But cooking requires time wealth. It requires time to shop, time to prep, time to cook, time to clean up. If you're working 2 jobs and commuting 2 hours by bus, you don't have that time wealth. You buy the $10 burger meal because it solves the hunger problem immediately.
No, I want to pivot slightly. We've talked about the internal psychology and the external mechanics, but there is also a social element here. Humans are social creatures, and money is a huge part of how we signal our place in the tribe.
This brings us to what the sources call social survival spending.
This is the keeping up with the Joneses idea, right? But I feel like that phrase is too dismissive.
It is too dismissive. We need to look at it with more nuance than just vanity. In a low-income environment, appearing poor can be dangerous. It can signal vulnerability. It can make you a target. Or, let's look at it professionally.
Right. If you show up to a job interview in tattered clothes.
Exactly. If you walk into an interview and your clothes are old, or you pull out a phone with a shattered screen that's 5 years old to check your calendar, you are signaling low status. Unconscious bias kicks in. You're less likely to get the job.
So buying the brand name sneakers or the latest phone, it's not just showing off. It's a form of armor. It's camouflage.
For many, yes. It's an attempt to avoid social stigma and integrate into the economy. But as Gemini points out, it prioritizes perceived wealth over actual wealth. You are trading your long-term security, that money in the bank, for temporary social acceptance. It's a survival strategy, but it's a costly one.
And that ties into emotional spending too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. ChatGPT highlights this as a coping mechanism. If your life is hard, if your job is grueling, if you feel disrespected all day by your boss and customers, you need a win. You need to feel human. Buying something nice for yourself, a nice meal, a gadget, a new outfit, is a way to reclaim a little bit of dignity or joy.
The I deserve this factor.
And the tragedy is, you do deserve joy. That's the hard part. But the math doesn't care about what we deserve. The consequence is that the temporary relief leads to long-term damage.
There's another behavior here that I think trips up people even when they start to do a little better. Lifestyle inflation.
The golden handcuffs of the lower middle class.
Yeah.
This keeps people hovering just above the poverty line for decades.
This is when you finally get that raise, maybe an extra $200 or $300 a month, and immediately your expenses go up by exactly that amount.
Right. You get the raise, so you finance a slightly better car. Or you move to an apartment that costs $200 more. Or you start ordering delivery a few more times a week. You think, I make more money now, I can afford this.
But you end up exactly where you started, paycheck to paycheck.
You've just upgraded the cage. You haven't actually escaped it. You're running faster on the hedonic treadmill, but you haven't built any equity or savings. You absorb the surplus immediately.
It's amazing how quickly that money gets absorbed. It's like Parkinson's law applied to finance. Expenses rise to meet income.
Unless, and this is key, unless you consciously intervene. But before we get to the solutions, there is one more category of habits we need to touch on. The sources call these silent erosions.
These are the things you don't do right, the neglect.
Yes, specifically delayed maintenance. This connects back to the scarcity mindset. If you're trying to save money now because you're scared, you might skip the $50 oil change. You might ignore that weird noise your car is making.
Or you skip the dentist for 3 years.
And this is the ultimate false economy. Because that $50 oil change you skipped, it eventually turns into a $2,000 engine replacement. That cavity you ignored. It becomes a root canal and a crown costing $1,500.
So by trying to save pennies today, you are guaranteeing you'll lose dollars tomorrow.
You are borrowing from the future again, but this time you are borrowing from the physical integrity of your assets or your body. And the interest rate on neglected health is higher than any payday loan.
And then there is the lack of knowledge, the financial literacy gap.
This is huge. And again, we have to be careful not to victim blame. As Claude points out, if no one ever taught you how compound interest works, or how credit scores are calculated, or how to budget, how are you supposed to know? The rules of the money game are complex.
It's not a character flaw, it's an educational void.
Exactly. But it leaves people vulnerable. It's why people fall for get-rich-quick schemes or play the lottery. Kimi mentions gambling as a major drain. When you don't understand the slow, boring math of wealth building, you look for miracles.
And the lottery is basically a tax on hope.
It is a transfer of wealth from the poor to the operators, fueled by desperation. It's buying a fantasy because the reality is too hard to look at.
Okay, so let's take a breath. We have painted a pretty stark picture here. We've got the cognitive load lowering our IQs, we've got predatory lenders waiting to catch us when we fall, we've got social pressures, and we've got the silent erosion of neglecting maintenance. It feels heavy.
It is heavy. And it's systemic. We have to acknowledge that the board is tilted.
However, and here is where it gets really interesting, the but. We promised solutions, we promised a way out.
We did. And the sources, especially ChatGPT and DeepSeek, are very clear on this. The core shift isn't about suddenly making $1 million. It's about shifting from survival mode to design mode.
From reactive to proactive.
Yes. And the first step, the absolute non-negotiable first step, is breaking the financial blindness.
You have to look at the numbers.
You cannot fix what you do not see. DeepSeek suggests us a forensic month. Don't even try to change your spending yet. Don't go on a restrictive diet. Just track it. Track every single penny for 1 month. Use a notebook, use an app, use the back of an envelope.
Just knowing where the money is going stops the bleeding.
It turns on the lights. It reveals those vampires we talked about. It shows you, oh, wow, I spent $40 on snacks at the gas station this week. Once you see it, the behavior often changes automatically. It's the Hawthorne effect observation changes the outcome. Before you see it, it's just happening to you. After you see it, it's a choice.
Okay, so we track. We wake up. What's the next move? Because if we are living paycheck to paycheck, we still have that flat tire problem. We are still vulnerable to the shock.
The buffer. You have to build the buffer. Gemini calls this the psychological seal of savings.
I like that term. What does it mean?
It means that saving isn't just about the math. It's about identity. Many people in poverty have an internal script that says, I am not the kind of person who can save. Saving is for rich people.
I'm just trying to survive.
Right. But if you can save even $5 a week,
Yeah.
just 5, you break that seal. You prove to yourself that you can accumulate capital. You begin to rewrite that identity.
And the goal here isn't a down payment on a house yet. It's just $500 to $1,000, right?
Yes. The goal is simply to turn a catastrophe into an inconvenience. If you have $500 in the bank, the flat tire is annoying, but it doesn't force you into a 400% interest payday loan. That $500 buys you freedom from the predator. It creates a firewall.
That is a powerful way to frame it. It's not just money, it's independence. It's saying no to the trap.
Precisely. It gives you the power of no.
Okay, so we are tracking, we are building a baby emergency fund. What about the spending habits, the impulse buys, the dopamine hits?
Copilot suggests a very tactical move, the 24-hour rule.
How does that work?
It's simple. If you see something you want to buy that isn't a survival necessity, a new gadget, a pair of shoes, whatever, you force yourself to wait 24 hours. You leave it in the cart. You walk out of the store.
We just walk away.
You walk away. You tell yourself, if I still want this tomorrow, I will come back and get it. But 90% of the time, the impulse, that dopamine craving, will have faded. You'll realize you don't actually need it.
That helps cool down the hot emotional state of the brain.
Exactly. It allows the prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, to come back online and override the emotional center.
What about debt? If someone is listening and they are already in the hole, credit cards, maybe a loan, how do they dig out?
There are 2 main schools of thought here, often called the snowball and the avalanche. And this is a classic debate between math and psychology.
Break them down for us.
The avalanche is the mathematical answer. You list your debts by interest rate. You pay off the debt with the highest interest rate first, regardless of the balance. This saves you the most money over time because you eliminate the most expensive debt first.
That makes sense logically.
It does. But we aren't robots. We are emotional creatures. If your highest interest debt is a huge balance, say $10,000, you might be paying on it for a year and feel like you aren't making any progress. You lose motivation. You quit.
Enter the snowball.
Right. In the snowball method, you ignore the interest rates. You list your debts from smallest balance to largest balance, and you attack the smallest one with everything you've got.
So if I have a $100 medical bill and a $5,000 credit card bill, I kill the $100 one first.
Yes. And when you pay it off, you get a win. You get a psychological boost. I did it. I closed an account. Then you take the money you were paying on that one and roll it into the next smallest one.
It gamifies it.
It does. It creates momentum. And for people who have felt helpless for a long time, that feeling of progress, those small wins, is often more valuable than the interest saved. The best debt payoff method is the one you will actually stick to.
I love that. It's about behavior, not just math.
There's one last tactic I want to mention, specifically for that lifestyle inflation problem, the race trap.
How do we stop upgrading the cage?
ChatGPT suggests automating your future success. If you know you're getting a raise or a tax refund or any kind of windfall, don't let it hit your checking account.
Divert it before you can see it.
Exactly. Set up an automatic transfer. You get a $200 raise. Set up an auto transfer of $100 to a savings account that happens the same day you get paid, ideally at a different bank that you don't check often.
You essentially hide the money from yourself.
You are hacking your own psychology. You are using your own laziness or inattention in your favor. If the money isn't there, you won't spend it. You learn to live on the remainder.
That is brilliant. It's taking the ostrich effect, ignoring things, and flipping it to work for you.
Exactly. You are designing a system where the default behavior builds wealth instead of destroying it.
So what does this all mean? We've covered a lot of ground today. We've gone from the crushing weight of cognitive load to the predatory math of payday loans, and finally to these tactical steps of tracking and automating.
I think the summary is this. The most destructive habits are often responses to pain. Living without a buffer, ignoring the numbers, relying on debt. These are the flinches of someone expecting to be hit.
And escaping that, it's not just about trying harder.
No. It requires two things. It requires systemic awareness, understanding that the game is rigorous and expensive. But it also requires personal discipline to build that system. You have to stop the bleeding. You have to track the numbers. You have to build that tiny wall of savings to keep the wolves out.
It is expensive to be poor, but small changes can start to lower that cost.
That's the hope. You can't control the economy. You can't control the housing market. But you can control that 24-hour rule. You can control trapping that $5. And that is where the power starts to shift back to you.
I want to leave our listeners with a final provocative thought, something to really chew on. It comes from the Gemini source, and it really stuck with me.
What is it?
The most destructive habit isn't a single purchase, it's the lack of a system.
That is powerful. It's not the latte, it's the lack of a plan.
So that's the question for you, listening right now. Are you making choices based on your current reality, reacting to the fires in front of you? Or are you designing a system, however small, for your future self?
Are you building a system that protects you?
Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.